Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt, and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. I am super excited to spend my next hour with Vanessa Bush. Hi Vanessa, how are you today?
Hey, Julia, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited. And I actually want to dedicate today's podcast episode to a good friend of mine. His and her name, it's actually two friends of mine. So I do have to kind of take this back. I want to dedicate it to two friends of mine, Amber and Pat, because Pat just decided to do a mini retirement for at least a year. And Amber is his very sweet girlfriend. That's a really good friend of mine. And she was actually very excited when I told her about the conversation that we're going to have today together. So I wanted to make sure to call them out and hope that obviously they're listening to this podcast today, and really excited to dive with you into all of the insights of that today.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm very excited to hear about their journey.
Yeah. So Vanessa, tell us first of all about your journey. And before we jump into that particular question, I actually do like to start my podcast with three very simple questions to just pick up our listeners. And they are, where are you located? What time is it? And how did you start your morning today?
Yeah, so I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. So it's just after 2 p.m. here, and it's Monday. So on Mondays, I'm very intentional after having the Sunday scaries for a majority of my career that I am really intentional with how I spend my Mondays. So I have a longer morning routine on these days. So I start off every morning with meditation, and then I go on a nice long walk and really spend some time outside and with the sun. And then I come back, I have my morning coffee and I journal, and then I do some yoga and a gratitude practice. So it really helps ground me for my week. So I really enjoy that. And then I have been in content creation mode today because I am planning on taking a lot of time off in December with some traveling coming up. So I wanted to work ahead as much as I can.
Nice. I think we're all in the same boat.
Yes, busy time of year.
A busy time of the year. Yeah. So what are you doing, right? This is the kind of the next question that I was already preempting, but tell us a little bit more about you. Who are you? What do you do? And pick us up on where your journey started. And that might be 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is. I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about your own journey.
Sure. So I am now a certified life coach and speaker, and I really work with high achieving, high performing women and really help them support them in managing their own stress. I think it's something that we all really could do a better job with. It's something as part of our everyday life. But really, it's seeking more balance and joy and just fulfillment in your life instead of letting stress manage you. So that's really comes down to all areas of your life too, where a lot of our stress can come from work, but that also I've learned just how interconnected all of the different areas of our life is. So when you really focus on one area, you can make a huge shift in all areas of your life.
Mhm.
But I became a life coach because of my own experience with stress. And that started about I was in management consulting for 10 years and change management, and I worked in financial services. So it was a very fast paced, complex environment to be in. I was constantly changing projects. So it was dealing with different client expectations and learning new things along the way. And my journey really began. I was in my mid-20s and I was really trying to grow my career. I had followed the traditional path of everything that was supposed to be making me feel successful and happy in life. I went to college, I had the great job, I got married, and I found myself, instead of being really happy and satisfied with where I was constantly stressed. I was overwhelmed with everything at work, my personal life. I would come home from work after working, 12-hour days, feeling I couldn't really unplug from my computer. I was constantly checking in on my emails. I felt constantly drained and just like I didn't have any energy. I'd get really irritable and emotional. I'd snap at my husband, and I had gained about, 15, 20 pounds. I was eating for convenience, and I just took a look around at myself and I thought there has to be more to life than this. What am I currently living like? This isn't what I thought it was going to be. I was also $100,000 in student loan debt with our combined debt. And it just felt like too much to manage. And I eventually took myself to the doctor because of all the physical health issues I was having as a result. I couldn't sleep. I was laying awake all night, racing thoughts, running through what I should or could have done better that day. I was really hard on myself. And it took a toll on me emotionally, physically, mentally. So I'm at the doctor's office and I am crying on the table. I was telling her everything that was going on in my life and how I just didn't know how to manage it. And she told me that there was nothing wrong with me. And she said I just need a good night's sleep, which
Mm.
sounded so crazy to me at the time because I wanted to sleep more than anything, but
Mhm.
I just couldn't. And so she diagnosed me with chronic stress. And because I wasn't able to manage it, it had turned into anxiety and depression. And now looking back, I think it was probably more along the lines of burnout, but this was in around 2014, and that wasn't something we were really talking about then. But so she went on to tell me I had asked if there's anything I could do to support myself in this and how I could help heal. And she told me that there was nothing wrong with me, that she had women in her office every single day, ranging from their teens up through their 60s, with the same exact issues I had because we have a lot on our plates, we have a lot of responsibilities, we're growing our careers. And so she wrote me a handful of prescriptions and she told me to come back in 3 months and to let her know if I needed anything before then. So, two things hit me as she walked out of the room that day. And one was I wasn't alone. I think, especially as high achievers, we don't want to admit that we don't have it all figured out. I always prided myself in having things figured out
Mhm.
and, being a high performer. And I didn't know how to ask for help. And so I really struggled with that. And I think that's what took me so long to even get to the point to go to the doctors. So hearing that she had women who were having the same issues as me, I realized that meant there had to be answers out there. So I was actually really encouraged by that. And then the second thing was I had to save myself. I think often we
Mhm.
are looking externally. I know I personally was waiting for the next project, the next manager, the next deadline to finally feel like I had a grasp on everything in my life. And, you know, something wasn't going to come and save me. I had to make the decision to take responsibility for myself, how I got here, and how I could move forward. So I actually left the day leaving the doctor's office feeling really empowered. I went home and I didn't fill my prescriptions. I decided that I was going to see what I could do for myself first. And I turned to my friend Google and I started researching all the ways that I could help myself sleep and manage my overall well being to take charge of my own life. And so this kind of turned into a multi year obsession with researching and implementing everything that I was learning. And what started as just trying to figure out how to sleep through the night without my racing thoughts and anxiety to really understanding the importance of getting movement in your day, the food you're eating, and then also just having a mental and emotional working through those and how to support yourself in a way that really helps you take charge of your life and not let our mindsets, I think so many of us don't even realize just how much our mental health really does impact the way we feel and show up in our
Yeah.
lives. And I think it's great that we're talking about that more now. So it was really this period for me of just soaking in as much as I could. And my whole life started to transform as a result of it. I was already a high achiever, but now I was performing at an even better rate in my job. I wasn't having that crazy stress all the time. And I really was able to start thinking forward about my life. I think a lot of times we're in survival mode, just trying to react and not being able to be intentional on what it is we wanted to create. So, all this being said, this took me on a journey for a few years and eventually led to me taking a mini retirement at 31 because I realized just through all of this and what I was learning is there's so much more to life than our careers. I think it's very common, chasing the American dream. We put so much emphasis on our jobs. But what happens in the process is we are missing out on those moments of everyday life, really connecting with each other, making our memories, and really living fully. So, this was an opportunity for us to kind of unplug and take a look at it that we can always make more money, but we can't get our time back. So, how did we want to spend it now?
Wow. I'm just like, okay, I'm listening. And I'm sitting here and nodding my head the whole time because just like so many others that are listening right now, I'm sure you can relate as much as I can to your story and to all of the things that you went through. So thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing that with so much detail as well, because I think especially in those little details lays these little nuggets of truth and the things that we are questioning and that self-doubt and feeling alone in this process. I remember when I went to the doctor's office in 2018 and got diagnosed with anxiety and depression, yeah, how alone I felt and how isolated and how not good enough and how much I questioned myself and this process that I was going through. And I really love that nowadays, we can talk about this more and we can share our experiences in order to help people see that they're not alone in this and that there's a way out of it. So you actually did continue working at your company for how much longer after you got diagnosed with anxiety and depression?
So I worked for them, the same company, for probably about 5 months before I decided to make a transition to another consulting firm. It
Okay.
was a decision I made more so for my own mental well being, but
Mhm,
also I learned so much about myself in that process that I
mhm,
didn't know how to put boundaries in place.
mhm,
I was a people pleaser. So it was more on me now that I realize looking back in the journey I've been on.
mm,
But it was a great kind of reset when I joined the next company. And you spoke of that vulnerability and sharing our stories. And what I learned when I went to this next company, the more I started talking about my own struggles, the more people started opening up and sharing their own struggles. And just like you said, you realize just how we are all going through very similar things. And the more we talk about it, the more we are learning from each other. And it's really
yeah,
shaping our experiences and the way that we're approaching our lives.
mhm. And then how long
So
did you work for the new company before you took the retirement?
So then I was there for about 3, 4 years, and then I landed
Mhm.
my dream job that I always said I wanted. I set
Wow.
out for when I went to college, and I was there for about a year. And then I started having that kind of nudge, that feeling like I wanted something different. That,
Mhm,
I had done this, I had everything I wanted,
mm,
and I wanted more meaning in my work, and I wanted more flexibility. And so I was kind of sitting with that for a while. And, I kind of felt ungrateful that I had everything I said I wanted.
mhm,
But then here I was, I wanted more. And I think that's kind of what happens as you start growing is you
mm,
realize how to enjoy where you are in the moment, but also what's next. You realize just how much confidence and self-belief you start to build in yourself that you don't notice in the day-to-day. It doesn't happen overnight, but when you reflect back on it, you realize just how much you've grown.
mm,
So I was actually driving home from work one day and I was stuck in bumper to bumper traffic and I was listening to a podcast. And I
mm,
wish I could remember who it was because this is a transformational moment for me.
mm,
But they were talking about how we hold ourselves back from living a life we really want.
mm,
And she said, how many of us have ever asked ourselves if we weren't going to be told no and failure wasn't an option, money wasn't an option? What would you do with your time and yourself right now? And I reached into my work bag, I grabbed out my notebook, my pen, I just started writing. And then I burst into tears afterwards because I wrote down that I wanted to pay off the rest of our student loan debt. We had made a lot of progress, but it was still something that was hanging over me. And that I wanted to find a new career. I wanted to find something that I was passionate about and make an impact doing it. And then I also wanted to travel full time. And it just sounded so crazy to me. I hadn't seen anyone else around me do that. I think the only time I've ever even heard of a mini retirement was from Tim Ferriss. So it was really just like I didn't know where this came from. So I sat with it for a few days and I was really thinking about it. And I was like, I need to tell my husband because this isn't going away. So I told him what I wanted to do, and he thought I was crazy. He was like, I don't know how we're ever going to do that, but like, let's keep talking about it. And we did. And we got to a point that I was ready to leave and find a different career. I wasn't sure what that was going to look like yet. So we were trying to come up financially with a plan on how to give myself some time to make that transition. And then one day, my husband woke up and said, I have it all figured out. And I was like, what are you
wow.
talking about?
Great husband.
Right? We're a good team. He is wonderful. But he told me, he's like, you can quit your job. You're going to travel full time. I'm going to quit my job too. And, what we have to do to make it happen is we have to sell our house. And it sounded so absurd to me. But I had that full body yes that I couldn't ignore it. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So it took us a while to come up with exactly what that was going to look like for us. There's a lot that goes into planning a trip like that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, First, we had to figure out just what was it that we wanted to travel and see. And we had a dog who, typical millennial, he was our child. We did everything for him. So we decided that we wanted to start with a road trip across the US so that we could spend that time with him as well. So we started researching just all the different places we wanted to go and see. We also wanted to get a lot of time with our friends in the process of this. So that helped drive a lot of our decision making too. But it was really incredible experience to just look at, you have all of these possibilities. What do you want to create with it? So we mapped out everything that we wanted to go and see on the US road trip. And then we also intentionally planned time to be with family and friends. So that was another big goal of us going through this mini retirement was just how much I learned our social well-being really plays a critical role in our overall fulfillment in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times I know I was really guilty of this is I either wasn't fully present when I was with my family and friends because I was running through everything with work, or, I was too tired to really give them my full attention and time. So I wanted to be intentional with how I was going to show up for them and spend this time with them, especially as our parents are getting older. So that was also another goal of ours. And then we were going to head to Asia and travel abroad and then do Europe after that.
Wow. How many months did you travel in total?
So we had planned for 18 months off, and we got about 6 months into it when COVID happened. So this was in 2019 when we left our jobs, but it was a whirlwind for sure. We actually found out at the end of our travels that our dog had cancer.
Mm.
So the vet, they caught it late. They only gave him a few weeks left to live. So we actually ended up canceling all of our international flights so we could spend time with him. And in the process of this is actually when the pandemic kind of really became a major event and all travel ended. So it's kind of crazy how
Wow.
things work out that we would have been in Asia when COVID broke out, but instead we were home with our dog. So in a way, he did prevent us from being overseas and potentially, you know, either overcome or have come in contact with COVID while we were there, or flights were insane getting home then because it was
Mm-hmm.
so chaotic.
Yeah.
Because flights were like $20,000 to get home, so it
Mm.
would have really blown the budget.
Yeah. Wow. I'm sorry about the dog as well. I assume he's no longer with us.
He is not, but it is one of those things that I'm so grateful for that experience. And it really did teach me just how intentional we need to be with our time and spend it the way
Yeah.
that we want to, because that was something we always wanted to do with him. And it seemed
Mm-hmm.
like such a far off dream, and we were able to make it a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And those memories we made in the process are ones I'm going to cherish forever.
Mm-hmm. And so you did travel with the dog for the 6 months?
We did, yes. So
Oh,
we did it all across the US and then Western Canada too.
okay. And do you have plans to kind of keep doing your mini retirement, like to go back into that?
Yeah, so we took kind of a pause when COVID happened. We were living, kind of week to week, hoping things were going to open up again. We eventually traveled actually more through the US at that point when it was safe to do so. And then we did spend time in Iceland. So we went there as soon as they opened up to tourists. So that was an incredible experience because we were the first flight there in Iceland accepting tourists. And so
Wow.
we basically had the entire country to ourselves. All of the sites we went to, we were the only ones. And we even got to hike the volcano while it was erupting, which was a bucket list item for me for sure. And so we got to have that experience too. And we were there with one other couple at the top of this volcano. So it was really incredible to experience that. But as far as continuing the mini retirement, it is something we hope to do at some point during this period when COVID was still, a major reason we couldn't travel, that's when I decided to reevaluate what I wanted this next chapter to look like. And it was really reflecting on my trip and just my past experience and what I wanted to create next that really made me realize just how much of an impact that we can make when we're sharing our experiences. And we really do need those mentors around us to help guide us. So when I decided to become a life coach so I could support other women to really create that life that they want and love instead of kind of living on the autopilot that a lot of us do. So my husband did end up going back to work during that period as well. So, in this period now where I am in my building my business and he's working into something we hope to do at some point.
Yeah, amazing. So I want to kind of backtrack all of these different pieces, right? Because I think it's so interesting. First of all, to make that big decision, and I actually know a few people that have done kind of this mini retirement, and I love that we even just have the awareness nowadays that we say, let's do this now, because maybe if we work until we're 65 or 67 or 70, right, then we might be sick or we might be too old to travel and
Right.
we are not going to have these experiences anymore. So why not do it now and kind of find that balance between obviously working and fulfilling ourselves and our careers and at the same time also just living life, right? Um, so, you talked a little bit about the preparation phase, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the details of, so you were saying you obviously sold your house. How long was that preparation phase? And also maybe, and also I feel like when we are talking about these things, it all sounds so linear and so easy, right? It's like I heard this podcast and I made this decision and then I did it kind of a thing, right? But can you give us a little bit more of that time frame as well of what, how long it actually took to make this happen?
Sure. So from the time we made the decision to do it, it took us about 6 months almost exactly to make it happen. So
Okay.
it was all of the research that went into it and really understanding, the monthly expenses of everything, how we were going to pay for it and fund it. So that took a lot of research. But
Mhm.
also, we renovated two of our bathrooms in our house
Mhm.
before we sold it
Mhm.
because we really wanted to get top dollar for our house. We had already done a major renovation in the rest of our house, so we wanted to make sure that the bathrooms matched. So it is one of those examples that you really realize how to prioritize things that are important to you and make the time for things. Because we were both in our jobs, we hadn't told our managers yet that we what our plans were. So all of this
Mhm.
was going on kind of behind the scenes.
Mhm.
So it was a lot of preparation just from the trip planning aspect, and then our house getting that ready to go on the market. But also, we didn't know how to travel like this. We had to
Mhm.
outfit, my husband had a truck. So we decided we were going to try to do some camping to help offset some costs. We
Mhm.
had never camped together in 10 years of being together. And so it was okay, what do we need to buy and get
Mhm.
everything ready for our trip? So
Mhm.
that took a while. I think the first people we actually told about what we were doing were the employees at REI, and they helped outfit us with all of our gear and everything. And they gave us a ton of suggestions on different national parks to see and just different areas to visit. But then after that, we had to start telling our family and our friends. And I think that was probably the hardest part
Mhm.
because as a recovering people pleaser, it was really hard to tell the people. My family, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, they had all moved down to Charlotte. So I felt like I was going to disappoint them by telling them that I was going on this trip and I was leaving.
Mhm.
And it wasn't guaranteed that we were going to come back. We were very open to finding another place to live and just whatever, we got out of the experience. We were kind of just open to letting it lead us to whatever happened as a result.
Mhm.
So that was really tough to tell everyone. But of course, my family was extremely supportive. They didn't really understand it all, but they were excited for us.
They even understood that you were selling the house?
Yes, I think that part people thought we were a little crazy about doing.
Mhm.
Um, but it really was that was the answer to making it happen. And
Mhm.
we, really believed, we could recreate what we had. And it
Mhm.
really was that self-belief that kept pushing us
Mhm.
forward.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was then telling our managers about it and giving them as much notice as possible. And that was really hard. I was in this job that I enjoyed. I had an incredible manager, a great team around me. It didn't make sense logically to be leaving,
Hmm.
but I just believed in this experience so much that, it was worth the risk to me.
Hmm.
And
How did they
also,
react to that decision?
it was interesting. I think the day that the email went out, my manager and I had it worked out. It was just the two of us who knew for a few weeks leading up to it. But then when she shared it with the team, I just remember kind of everyone's head like popping up out of cube land, like, what are you doing? It seems so crazy. I had a teammate call me who worked out of a different location and she asked me, she's like, is your health okay?
Mm,
And I was like, "Yeah, why?" She's like, "This seems like such a drastic decision."
mm,
And she's like, "I just want to make sure everything was okay."
mm.
And I think that kind of speaks to the culture we're in too,
Yes.
that it just seems like such an absurd idea to follow through on a dream of yours and take a break from your career.
Mhm,
But I did have a lot of mentors who had mixed feelings about it. Some of them were really encouraging, and other ones thought I was insane. They thought I was throwing away my career that I had built really hard, and
mhm,
that my path was to go on to these leadership positions, and I was risking that by taking this step back from my career.
mhm,
But I really, felt so strongly in myself that I was going to gain something out of this experience that was going to put me on the right path, whether that was to
mhm,
go back to corporate and take on, pick up kind of where I was. I had a great relationship with my manager.
mhm,
So I felt safe in that sense that I could
mhm,
go back
mhm.
afterwards, hopefully. But I was just really open to just what that experience was going to be and excited to just see where it took us.
Yeah. Ah, so cool. And it's very interesting as well that your partner was also so open to the whole experience, right? That's kind of what I kind of keep thinking, that it's so beautiful that he was in it with you. What would you have you ever thought about, kind of the other side? Like what if he would have said, "Okay, Vanessa, you go and do that, but I am gonna stay at my job," or something like that?
Yeah, so I actually hear that a lot from people, and specifically women. Initially, when I would tell them, is they were like, "Wow, you are so lucky that your
Mm,
partner was willing to do that. That he was able to, support your dreams." And I am extremely grateful for that, and I think it's a testament to our relationship that we built together,
mhm,
and to really, something that we have really worked on together. We've been together for 13, 14 years now, is that communication. What, are we feeling? We would travel a lot as a couple. And I think this was a really transformational experience for us, where it may not have been his lifelong dream to go travel full time. It was always something we were talking about. We were always planning trips together because it's something that really gets you out of your comfort zone. And when you are in a different environment and you're learning these new things, new cultures, you're meeting new people, it was really a time for us to connect on a deeper level and have these kind of, what are our goals? What do we want our relationship to look like? What do we want to experience? So I think he was kind of along for the journey. It wasn't kind of a blind side that I wanted to do this. But I actually haven't thought about the alternative. I think because we've always supported each other in whatever that one's goal is. It's how can we support you? And that may mean one of us takes a step back for now while the other one's working towards whatever goal that is. So I think it's really just been a journey of us growing together and having that communication and trust in each other that this is going to be the right move for us.
yeah. And, the two friends that I dedicated this episode to, actually have two different paths. So he decided to take this mini retirement for himself to, explore other options and, just be with himself and understand, what he wants to do next. And my friend is still working. And I think, and I do want to mention this because it also works that way. The mini retirement doesn't mean that your partner needs to be in it and you need to travel. Like a mini retirement can also mean that you're making this decision for yourself and that you just explore a year on your own what kind of career you want to go in next, and what you want to dedicate your life to, and what you're really passionate about, right? I have so many different clients that I talk to, and they tell me, I don't really know what I'm passionate about, because I followed this traditional path, and I just thought that this is where I'm going to find my happiness because everyone does it, right? And so even just creating that space for yourself and finding that, I think, is so wonderful and so beautiful in its own way. And it doesn't have to be with the partner, and the relationship can still, you know, work even when two people do two different things.
Right. I think that is something that we get caught up on a lot, is just feeling like our circumstances are kind of concrete. But just like that, when you start looking and exploring different opportunities, there's always a way to make something happen. And I think also it's so beautiful listening to you talk about that, because I think something that is great for your relationships is allowing each other that space
Yeah.
and acceptance to continue to grow and walk your own path.
Hmm.
So I think something we get wrong in our relationships is we feel like, everything has to be, you know,
Together.
yes, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just giving each other that space to, we're all growing as individuals, and to fully experience life. You can't let that, prevent you from following through on what it is that you want to create and experience in your lifetime. But I will say that something that I think helped him stay on board was when we were traveling, and even just conversations with friends and mentors, is people would start sharing their regrets, and they would start sharing even though they were really successful, they didn't enjoy their job, that they were doing it for their kids so their kids wouldn't have to work that job,
Mm.
that they were doing it to provide for their families, but they actually didn't like their career, or their partner's health had declined, or they had lost a significant other. So they had all of these dreams that they wanted to do and all these plans, like you said. But when we wait to our 60s or 70s, we just aren't guaranteed that.
Mhm.
And I think that's something we encountered a lot on our trip too, is we're at all these incredible destinations, and there's people everywhere who are sitting on a tour bus or can't finish the hike because this is something they always wanted to do, but their health wasn't there for them.
Mhm.
And that is just something we kept hearing. It was a common theme anytime we traveled,
Mhm.
was do things that you love now and with the people you love. So
Mhm.
I think it was just something that kind of got embedded into our subconscious as we were traveling and thinking of, what is it that we want to enjoy in our life? And little motto we always have with each other is live a great story. If we're having a hard time making a decision, we're like, live a great story. What is the
Wow.
fun experience that we
Love
can
that.
make out of this?
Mhm.
And, it really does just build your resiliency in the process.
Mhm. So beautiful. So one big factor that I know a lot of people are worried about when you're making that kind of a decision is the financial part, right? Because especially as you both came from a corporate job, I'm sure you had a very, solid every 2 week paycheck. And that's obviously hard to to take, to walk away from. So how did you plan that, and are you more like a frugal person where you're like, have everything like super figured out and like super um calculated and budgeted for, or and maybe you were like that at the beginning, but then it kind of, you were opening up yourself more as you were having these different experiences. What was kind of that financial landscape like for you?
Yes. So, my husband being the project manager he is, we always live and breathe by our Excel spreadsheets. So we were pretty disciplined before that with our finances and, budgeting out different areas. We knew how much we spent kind of on, our products that we just need to use day to day, and also our entertainment budget and everything. So we were pretty disciplined when it came to that. But it is a very different story when you are looking at your bank account and not having income coming in, like you
Mhm.
said, and you are seeing your numbers just drop month after month. So I think that is something, is balancing living and having these experiences we really wanted, but also, we had really started to embrace more of a simple lifestyle, minimalist lifestyle. And this trip also really made me realize just how much stuff we don't actually need.
Mm,
And so that was an area we were able to cut back on is, clothes. Like when
mm,
you're traveling, you're wearing the same things time and time again. So, we weren't spending money on clothes. And we were cooking a lot of our own food. We're big foodies though, so we did a lot for part of our budget to go to eating out because we wanted to experience the different food in the different areas we were in. So I think it was really just taking a look at what could we cut out and what luxuries were we used to that, were going to be a special occasion instead of a regular thing. So it really came down to just being disciplined on what was important to us and, having that decision like, do we want to spend that money or could that be
mm.
better spent somewhere else?
Yeah. So you're definitely getting more mindful about where money goes, right?
Absolutely. And especially now, too, after coming back, you
Mhm.
just realize how different of a mindset you have. And, instead of spending money on, more material things, I'd rather spend it on, going and getting a massage or,
Mm.
doing hot cold therapy or something like that. It is just more focused on our health and well being now instead of more of the
Interesting.
material things.
Yeah, very cool. And so what was it like? What was the trip like? And what are maybe a few big takeaways that you had during that process?
Yeah, so it was absolutely incredible. It was everything I think I had hoped for,
Mhm.
and just I really had learned so much and so much about myself. And so this was really an experience to fully immerse myself in all of my learnings. What was I learning as a result of it and what enjoyment could I get day to day? And it was a time for us to really, spend time in our hobbies. We spent a lot of time skiing and we, bought bikes and we rode our bikes around all the towns. And that was a great way to sightsee, to cover
Mhm.
more ground than walking, but also get that experience of being more on the ground. We also really, like I said, loved being outdoors. So I think that's something that I know I didn't understand the value of spending time in nature before we went on this trip. I've read a lot because it is really helpful to anxiety and depression. And I think that is a disconnection that we've made in our modern day living that we are so caught up in just running through the motions of everyday life that we don't take that time to even take a look around and appreciate everything and really be mindful of nature and your surroundings and how you're feeling. So it was really an introspective time for me to really just get to know myself on a deeper level and have more appreciation just for kind of the world around me. But we also met a ton of people. It was just the two of us on our trip, and we spent every minute together. So it was great. We'd go out to eat. We'd always sit at the bar so we could talk to other people or to the bartenders, and we learned so much from them. It's interesting when you tell someone your story and what you're doing. Like people will open up and tell you their entire life story and all of their regrets that they had or what they wish they could have done. Or some people had followed their dreams, and it was really inspiring to hear what they had achieved in their
Mm,
lifetime.
amazing. Yeah.
So I think just back to the point we made earlier, just hearing each other's stories and being vulnerable with each other, there's just so much to learn and really changes your thinking as a result of it. But I'd say probably some of my biggest takeaways from that is hearing these people talk. From the time I submitted my resignation, I was getting calendar invites left and right from people wanting to have a coffee and chat, and they wanted to pick my brain on why I made this decision. And then they would go on about all of their dreams that they wanted to do. And I also hear a lot about the limitations and how much of it is just our own limiting beliefs or stories that we're telling ourselves. And it's our human nature. I know I did it for the longest time too. We kind of feel victim of our circumstances. But when you're able to start working on your mindset and seeing and recognizing these, and I think self awareness is huge with this and emotional intelligence, that you're able to recognize your own patterns and really start working towards what it is you want to create. So I think that was a huge takeaway was just how important our mindset is and that we are the biggest obstacle in creating whatever it is that we want. And I also think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make the right decision. like we've been talking about, it feels safe to go that traditional path, to have that career and just kind of, follow the path that society tells us will make us successful. But this is just fear holding us back too. Instead of following through on what it is that we really want to do, we just let that fear story kind of take over, and it's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And even if things don't work out, this is a major takeaway for me. Our trip did not go at all according to plan, but it's just a redirection when things don't go right. You learn so much about yourself in the process, and you're building your confidence each step of the way. I don't think I ever saw myself as a business owner before I took this opportunity, but I just really was able to recognize my strengths and, the self-belief that I was able to do this now as a result of it. So I think it's hard to take that leap of faith, but it is such a rewarding experience once you do. And I'd probably say the another takeaway would just be how change doesn't have to be a drastic decision. I
Mm.
know taking a mini retirement can sound really scary or something that's not even interesting to you, which is totally fine. We all have our own goals and dreams in life. But I didn't get to where in the decision I made without taking those small, daily, consistent actions. And I think that's something we forget a lot when it comes to transformations is we feel like it has to be these big steps, these big decisions we make. But it's, these small, consistent actions you're taking each day. And for me, it was to making that decision to start showing up for myself and start prioritizing my health, which then led to all these other areas cascading into getting more joy and fulfillment and balance in my life. And it all just starts with one step. So I think it's really understanding that we have the power to make complete transformation in our life by making the decision to prioritize yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful and rings so true to me. I think we all should do mini retirements all the time, you know? And I
Yes,
I actually never thought about this upcoming 4-week trip to Mexico as a mini retirement. But it is, right? It is fulfilling these things that I had could have never dreamt of before when I was working for a corporate company, right? Because you have only limited amounts of vacation, and I feel like if you ask for 3 or 4 weeks, there is a slight eyebrow raised.
absolutely.
And this year I've been traveling so much, right? I was in Europe 2 weeks in June because I visited my family. I was in Europe for 2.5 weeks in August. I was in Wisconsin for a week, and now I'm going to Mexico, right? That's already like 10 week of vacation that no corporation really can offer you, right? So it is really beautiful to create more of that intentional time for yourself to live your life now. And
And
yeah, sorry.
No,
Okay.
and not to mention just like, how do you feel after taking that time for
Mhm.
yourself? I think something that in corporate America we think that it's going to be frowned upon or it's going to,
Mm.
take us away from our progress, but you come
Mhm.
back so much more recharged. The research is showing us too just how your creativity is increased by taking
I
that
just
time
wanted to
away.
say I feel so much more creative
Yeah.
when I come back from these trips because you also see different things and how people live. And I think you get more perspective on things in life than if you would obviously just sit in front of the computer all day long and not gain these valuable insights about life.
Absolutely. So I think it is, I see a lot of companies are offering short-term sabbaticals and stuff
Mhm.
now, which I
Yeah,
think is incredible because you are getting a better version of your employee when they return from that. And I
100%.
think that is the greatest gift we can give ourselves too, is to change our thought process around rest and how important it is to take that time to unplug.
Mhm.
And as hard as it can be because you feel like the world's going to end without you checking your email. I know I used to feel that way. It's, you are coming back and showing up as a better version of yourself each time you're able to do that. So I think we need to change that narrative around rest and taking time off and really take that time to unplug.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally couldn't agree more. And so one of the things that you said that resonated really deeply with me as well at the beginning was about, how you were that high achiever and you actually got to the role that you wanted to do, and then you still felt unfulfilled and were looking for more, right? And one of the things that I've been seeing a lot in client conversations over the last couple of months was exactly that journey of, I am taking this maybe challenging role and I'm growing in it. Maybe I have some imposter syndromes at the beginning, imposter
Mm.
feelings, and I'm growing and I'm learning, and then I'm really good at it. But as soon as I'm good at it and I'm fulfilling that dream and I am successful, I'm also starting to be bored and I'm starting to look
Mhm.
for that next challenge and for that next discomfort that then will bring me back into that spiral maybe of self-doubt and lack of confidence and a little bit of fear, but it helps you to grow. So I'm curious to hear about your journey going back to the working world and making that conscious decision that you're actually not going back to the corporate space. Was that something that you already knew when you went into your mini retirement, or did you leave that completely open and then it shaped as you were traveling?
I left that completely open. I really wasn't sure. I, like you had mentioned, loved the idea of the security of a full time
Mhm.
job and the paycheck and everything. But it probably took me 3 to 4 weeks to fully decompress
Mhm.
from the corporate world and to, I'd still wake up, weeks after and like, oh, did I transition the right, work
Mhm.
over? So I think it takes us time to really process and unwind from all of it.
Mhm.
Uh, but I was completely open, and it didn't take long, maybe a month or two of I loved that flexibility of shaping my own day and really creating it and scheduling it however I wanted to. So
Mhm.
my husband was totally fine going back to the corporate world. He really actually appreciated that structure. And I had this taste now of freedom and flexibility. And I thought, there is no way I can go back to corporate.
Mhm.
And so that was something I had to really think about because when I did come back from traveling and COVID was ongoing, I had
Mhm.
a lot of my old coworkers reach out with job opportunities. And it was something I really thought hard about because I enjoyed the work I did, but like you said, I wasn't challenged anymore. And I just felt like I wanted more out of the work I was doing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think I knew pretty quickly that it was going to be something that I wanted to create myself. And whether it was freelance work or that's when I discovered coaching, just kind of as a result of my own self exploration going through
Mhm.
COVID and having time on my hands. I
Mhm.
just realized how valuable it is to create a vision for yourself and really understand your values. I think that is something we're not really taught growing up is why did I feel like I wasn't fulfilled in that job? And it
Mhm.
was taking a look at what my core values were. And I do really appreciate the flexibility and, having more of, um, I guess, the space in my time and day to create what it is I want. So I think it's just really understanding your working style. And I think it can be
Mhm.
hard to make that decision when you're in the actual job. But
Mhm.
I think that you can start exploring what are my strengths? What are my values? And really understanding how can you apply that to your current job? But also, if you're still feeling unfulfilled, how can you apply that to another career and really start exploring those options for you?
Yeah, amazing. And then you did that, and now you are having your own coaching business.
Yes, and I love that, and it's something I'm super excited about just because I think we need that mentorship and guidance and just an unbiased opinion. I know that can be really hard when you're talking to family or friends is they
Yeah.
want what's best for you or what they think
Mhm.
is best for you. And had I
Well, I
listened
think
to
they also put their own self-limiting beliefs on you, right? And that's, I feel like in our parents' and older generation, it's more about like having the same job for 40 years and being safe and secure. Like my parents, there was also a lot of discussion when I left my corporate job. But yeah, I think it's about having that confidence that you can do it. And I think that gives them hopefully, and I'm sure that gave them kind of the enough of the um, trust that it's okay, and that they can trust you, that you're
trust
doing
you.
your own thing.
Yes.
Yeah. That they don't have to
Yes.
come up with money 6 months down the line.
Right. I will say that we lived with my family for a period of time. So I think that does just come back to where we're talking about the different areas of well being. But because of these relationships I had built and the support system that I had created with my family over the years, that they were there when we needed them. And it was such a beautiful time for us in our relationships because I would have never had that experience otherwise. We had lived for a few months with my parents, and those were great memories, like spending time together. And then I also lived with my sister and brother in law for a period. And they have two kids. So I got to co parent my niece and nephew. And we don't have kids ourselves. And that was just an incredible experience to spend that time with them and really be a part of their childhood. And I think there's just so much satisfaction and fulfillment in life when you can look at these simple things in life and have the gratitude and awareness that this is something special. And it's really what you create, and being present with them, I think, is so transformational for your relationships. Is to there's always something we could be focusing on or doing, but it is really understanding that your time with someone is, I feel like your presence is the greatest gift you can give them. And it's really, how you enjoy your life by really focusing and putting an emphasis on these relationships.
Yeah, I can't agree more. It's awesome that you're saying that. And so I'm kind of curious, I don't know if you have it, but is there like an Instagram account or like some kind of travel diaries where kind of reported a little bit on that journey that you had?
Yes, so I do have an Instagram. You can find me at Vanessa Bush Wellness. But it's funny that you bring that up because I had full intentions on blogging the entire time I was
Mm.
gone.
Mhm.
And I got a few weeks into the trip and I found that it was a lot more of trip planning than I was anticipating.
Mm.
We encountered a lot of, we had mapped out our route and everything, but then we had a lot of weather impacts and it was constantly, rerouting and changing our schedule. So it took up a lot more time than I was anticipating. And I also reached a point when I started focusing on it that I really wanted to take this time to focus on myself and my own experience. And I had a lot of anxiety when I think about starting to write while I was on the trip because I didn't want to shape it in a way of, you know, I guess leading readers in a journey. I wanted to have my own experience and reflect back on it and not feel like I had to hit a deadline or anything because I noticed I started getting stressed over it.
Hmm.
So I did take that pause and decided not to post during that period, which I kept a journal. And I think that was transformational in myself, just reflecting on what we were seeing and doing and learning in the process. And I'm in the process now of creating a blog to start sharing all of my learnings
Amazing.
because it has been such a reflection period for me over this past year since we officially kind of ended our mini retirement. And you had brought up earlier just the fear too that goes along with a lot of things. And I think that's even something I experienced is, this was such a personal experience. And did I want to share
Yeah.
my learnings and
Yeah.
everything and feel really vulnerable about my own journey? And I
Mhm.
think something that even, being my own business owner now has really taught me is your fear is always going to be there. And
Yeah.
it's really leaning into that and realizing that you can help someone or inspire someone by sharing your story.
Mm.
So that is something I'm working on and launching in the beginning of the year is a blog and a YouTube channel. So I'm very excited for that. And I feel like I'm really energized. And now's the right time for me to share more of my story.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. I can't wait to watch it and see it and read it because it's really so inspiring and so powerful to just kind of hear that journey. And in my head, I'm already like, how can I do this? How can I create even more space? How can I spend more time with my family because they're obviously in Germany, so I do get to spend very little time with them, and I haven't seen them. I saw them a lot this year, but before that I hadn't seen them in 3 years because of the pandemic. And so
Right.
it's definitely been something on my mind, of course, seeing my family getting older and my niece getting older, to think, how can I spend more time with them and create that space. So you got me thinking there, so thank you so much for that. And I think you already mentioned how to connect with you. So you said your Instagram is Vanessa Bush Wellness, and I will of course make sure that there's all of the different links in the show notes as well. I also have a link for a discovery call with Vanessa and her website. So I'll make sure to connect that all in our podcast show notes today. Vanessa, it was such a pleasure to hear you talk about your mini retirement. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your story. And if you, listener, have been listening to this episode now and you know someone that's maybe thinking about mini retirement or that's struggling making a decision in general, maybe share this podcast episode with them. Maybe this is exactly what they need to hear in order to take that next step and to go out into the world and make themselves a little bit more happy. I would really appreciate it if you would do that, because I know that that's kind of the power of podcasts and why I'm podcasting in the first place. So thank you so much for doing that, and I wish you a wonderful holiday season. Vanessa, best of luck with your business. Really excited to hear about your blog and about your YouTube channel. Make sure to connect me on your Instagram stories or posts, and I'm super happy to share that as well with my community so they can stay in the loop of things. And yeah, that's all I wanted to share today. So thank you so much again, Vanessa, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed our conversation.